How Bitcoin was created, the story that changed money forever. Imagine a world where you can send money to anyone, anywhere on the planet, without needing a bank, government, or permission from a third party. Today, this sounds normal when we talk about cryptocurrencies, but a few years ago, this idea seemed impossible. The story of Bitcoin began long before the currency itself was created. It was born from a mix of financial crisis, technology, rebellion against banks, and the dream of financial freedom. It all started in the 1980s and 1990s, when programmers and cryptography experts believed the internet would completely change the world. But there was one problem. Although it was possible to send messages and information online, there was no truly secure way to send digital money without depending on banks. At that time, several projects tried to create digital currencies. One of the most famous was e-gold, which allowed online payments backed by gold. Other projects also appeared, but they all had the same problem. They depended on a central company controlling everything. And whenever there is a central authority, governments can shut the system down, freeze accounts, or control transactions. That's when a group known as the Cypherpunks emerged. The Cypherpunks were programmers, mathematicians, and defenders of digital privacy. They believed cryptography could protect people's freedom on the internet. While the world was becoming increasingly connected, they were already warning about surveillance, financial control, and loss of privacy. These developers spent years trying to create a decentralized digital currency. But there was one major obstacle called the double spending problem. The double spending problem was simple. Digital files can be copied infinitely. If digital money were just a file, someone could copy it and spend the same money multiple times. Banks solved this issue by using central servers to verify all transactions. But the cypherpunks' goal was precisely to eliminate the need for a central authority. For many years, nobody could fully solve this problem, until October 31st, 2008, when something historic happened. A person, or a group of people, using the name Satoshi Nakamoto, published a document online called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. In this document, known as the Bitcoin White Paper, Satoshi introduced a revolutionary solution to the problem of digital money. The idea was simple yet brilliant. Instead of a bank controlling transactions, thousands of computers around the world would verify them together. All transactions would be recorded in a giant public ledger called the blockchain. The blockchain works like a permanent history of every transaction ever made. Each block contains information from previous transactions, creating a chain that is nearly impossible to alter. But the most impressive part was the security system. To add new blocks to the network, computers would need to solve complex mathematical problems. This process became known as mining. Miners spend electricity and computing power to validate transactions. As a reward, they receive newly created bitcoins. This created something entirely new, a digital currency that did not depend on trust in banks or governments, but instead on mathematics, cryptography, and network consensus. A few months after the white paper was published, in January 2009, the first Bitcoin block was mined. This block became known as the Genesis block. Inside it, Satoshi Nakamoto hid a message. The message said, "The time 03/Jan/2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." This was the headline of a British newspaper discussing another financial bailout for banks during the 2008 financial crisis. That message was not placed there by accident. Satoshi wanted to show that Bitcoin was created as an alternative to the traditional financial system, especially after the crisis caused by the banks themselves. At that time, millions of people lost jobs, homes, and savings. Meanwhile, governments were printing money and rescuing major financial institutions. Bitcoin was born precisely as a response to that system. In the beginning, almost nobody took the project seriously. Bitcoins had no real financial value. They were seen merely as a technological experiment among programmers. The first people interested in it were developers, nerds, and cryptography enthusiasts. During the first few months, mining Bitcoin was incredibly easy. All you needed was a regular computer. There are stories of people who mined thousands of Bitcoins without imagining that one day they would be worth millions of dollars. Then one of the most famous moments in cryptocurrency history happened. In 2010, a programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz made the first real-world purchase using Bitcoin. He paid 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than a joke among internet users. Today, those pizzas would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This event became so famous that the crypto community celebrates Bitcoin Pizza Day every year. From that moment on, Bitcoin slowly began gaining attention. New users joined the network. Small communities formed. Online forums discussed the future of this technology. But along with growth came problems. Because Bitcoin allowed transactions without intermediaries, it also started being used in illegal online marketplaces. This created enormous controversy. Governments became suspicious of the digital currency, and many people believed Bitcoin would eventually be banned or disappear quickly. In addition, the price was extremely volatile. Bitcoin has risen by thousands of percent and has also crashed by more than 80% several times. Even so, the technology continued evolving. Over time, companies began accepting Bitcoin payments. Investors started seeing it as a potential store of value, comparing it to digital gold. And then something even more mysterious happened. Bitcoin's creator simply disappeared. Satoshi Nakamoto stopped sending messages in 2011. To this day, nobody knows for certain who Satoshi really is. There are many theories. Some believe Satoshi was a single person. Others think it was a group of developers. There are even suspicions involving scientists and famous technology figures. But the true identity has never been proven. And perhaps that is one of the biggest reasons for Bitcoin's success. Since there is no known owner, no single person can control the network. Today, Bitcoin has become a global phenomenon. Major companies buy Bitcoin. Governments discuss regulations. Investment funds invest billions. And millions of people around the world use cryptocurrencies every day. In addition, Bitcoin paved the way for the entire crypto industry. Ethereum, NFTs, decentralized finance, smart contracts, and thousands of other projects were born thanks to the technology created by Satoshi. Even after so many years, Bitcoin remains one of the most revolutionary inventions of the digital age. For some, it represents financial freedom. For others, it is simply a speculative asset. And for many, it may be the future of money. But one thing is certain. Bitcoin permanently changed the way the world sees money, banks, and economic freedom. And to think that it all started with a simple document published by someone whose true identity remains unknown to this day.